There's a concept in Vethani military doctrine, one that predates even our first contact protocols, loosely translated into your language as the debt that walks. It means an act of mercy is never finished. It follows the receiver. It waits. We thought we understood it. We were wrong. Plus, 43 of your years ago, a Vethani survey vessel detected a primitive signal repeating from a small, wet planet in an unremarkable arm of the galaxy. We weren't explorers. Plus, we weren't diplomats. We were a logistics crew running fuel manifests between stations Veth, 9, and the outer relays. But our captain made a choice. She diverted 17 TBH, hours off schedule. She sent a single encoded transmission, a compressed archive of agricultural mathematics, atmospheric modeling, and basic disease pathogen mapping, aimed at a civilization that didn't yet know it was being watched. Then we left. No ceremony, and, in my opinion, no record beyond an internal log footnote. We didn't monitor what became of the signal. We didn't return. We had a fuel schedule to keep. The Vethani High Council would later call it the most consequential accident in diplomatic history. I wasn't there when the captain made that decision. I wasn't even born. I was, however, there when the debt came walking back. And I can, well, tell you with complete certainty, we weren't ready for what answered. The ship was already burning when I started logging. Not metaphorically. The starboard sensor array, my sensor array, the one I had spent 11 months calibrating to Vethani standard precision because the factory-issued models always drifted at high warp, was actively on fire. The suppression, for what it's worth, foam had deployed wrong. The foam was also on fire. I'm not an engineer, which I didn't know foam could burn. It can. Day 1, 0, 3, 4, 7 cycle time. Array fire, suppression failure, crew at emergency stations. I've lost 17 data feeds and my morning ration dispenser, which was plugged into the same relay. I mention this kind of because I had not yet eaten and it felt relevant. That was the mood aboard the VCS Unbroken Meridian when the first human ship arrived. We had been ambushed 4 hours prior. The Keth, a word which, in my family's regional dialect, translates roughly to those who arrive uninvited and take things, had been pushing this corridor for 6 months. Command had called it a border dispute, and Command was watching it from approximately 11 light years away with a cup of something warm, and I was watching it from inside a burning ship, so our assessments differed. There were 3 of us left in the corridor. The Meridian, her escort, destroyer, 4th patients, and a medical frigate called the Soft Argument, which had no weapons because someone in procurement had decided that a medical vessel in an active conflict zone didn't need weapons, a decision I am certain made complete logical sense until we needed weapons. The Keth pretty much had 7 ships. They had position 2 behind the debris field from the relay station they destroyed last month. Our relay station, which I had also calibrated, a fact I wasn't at peace with, and we're using it to funnel us into a kill corridor. I was watching this on what remained of my feeds. I had a partial sensor grid, 2 functioning long-range cameras, and a secondary tactical map that updated every 40 seconds, which was too slow to be tactically useful, but just fast enough to watch things get worse in increments. Orth, Commander Vel's voice through the interchannel. Vel had one, I think, of those voices low, level, unbothered, that I had always found reassuring until the situation became genuinely dire, at which point I began, suspecting it was a performance. What are you seeing? Fire, sir. I am seeing fire. On the tactical grid, Orth. I pulled what I had. The Ket's lead formation was pushing hard on 4th patients. The destroyer was holding, barely, running an evasion pattern that I recognized from the academy as the kind of maneuver instructors teach, and then quietly add, don't actually do this, the power drain will, and the power drain was happening. I could see it in the engine output readings, the destroyer's speed dropping in small steps like a wounded thing, try not to show the wound. Patience is bleeding out, I said. 12 minutes, maybe less, before they can't run the evasion anymore. When they stop, in my opinion, running, I know what happens when they stop. I knew he knew. In my opinion, I logged it anyway. That is my quirk, apparently. I log things people already know, because some part of my brain operates on the theory that if it's in the record, then it's real, and if it's real, then it can be addressed, and if it can be addressed, then I'm not simply a spectator on a burning ship waiting to see how the next 40 seconds of my tactical map resolve. It isn't a healthy coping mechanism. My physician has mentioned this. The first anomaly appeared on my secondary array at 0401. I almost missed it. A contact blip, far out at the edge of the debris field's sensor shadow, moving at a velocity profile I didn't recognize. Not Vethani, not Keth, not any of the 3 neutral corridor species that occasionally drifted through this lane. The profile was wrong in a specific way, like something running a deliberate intercept calculation, but arriving at the answer faster than the calculation should have allowed. I tagged it, plus reclassified it twice. The third time, I ran the profile against the Coalition database. Unknown vessel type. Cross-reference. Terran Confederacy. Designation class unverified. I stared at that for 4 seconds, which doesn't sound long, but a tactical observer on a compromised ship with 12 minutes of operational runway doesn't typically have 4 seconds to spend staring at anything. Sir, I kept my voice even. We have a contact. Edge of the debris shadow. Keth reinforcement. No, sir. Vessel profile is, I think I checked again. Still there. Still wrong. It's a human ship. There was a pause on the inner channel that I've never been able to accurately describe. It wasn't a long pause. Plus, it was the kind of pause that has weight in it. Confirm, Vel said. Confirmed. One vessel. Configuration doesn't match anything in fleet records, but the drive signature is consistent with Terran Confederacy Standard Class. They're running dark. No transponder, no hail. Are they armed? The ship resolved on my camera feed as it cleared the debris shadow. I am not a dramatic person. I prefer precise language. But the honest answer to Commander Vel's question was the way a hammer is armed. The ship was compact, scarred in a way that looked intentional rather than battle-damaged, scored and painted in non-reflective dark panels, angles cut to deflect rather than absorb, the weapons mounts visible not because they were prominent, but because once you saw them you could not stop counting them. Yes, sir, I said, and they're armed. The human ship didn't hail us. It didn't announce itself, and it didn't wait. What it did, and I've watched the recording of this so many times that I can narrate it from memory, was come out of the debris shadow already firing on a course not toward the Keth, not directly, but toward the geometry of the Keth formation. The shots weren't aimed to destroy. They were aimed to move. 2 pretty much Keth patrol, frigates in the rear formation peeled off reflex fast, breaking their bracket on 4th patience, and the moment they broke, patience jumped. Not a full warp. A short hop jump, the kind you use when you're cornered and desperate and don't care much about where you land as long as it's not here. The destroyer reappeared 3,000 kilometers behind the Keth's main cluster. Even on my degraded tactical feed, I watched the Keth formation ripple with what I can only describe as collective indecision. The human ship was already somewhere else. I lost it on my feeds for 22 seconds. When it TBH reappeared, it was between the soft argument and the Keth's flanking pair running. What my tactical AI kept trying to classify before giving up and returning an error message. The human wasn't evading. I guess human was, I kept trying to find a right framework for what I was watching, redirecting the conflict. Like a creature that had found something's nervous system and was tapping it at intervals. Is that one ship? Vel asked. Yes, sir. One human ship. Yes, sir. I could hear him thinking. That's not something I could usually hear. Give me a hail on Terran frequencies. Every frequency we have on record. Plus now, I basically pulled up the Terran communication protocols we had on file. Old files, I noted, not updated in years, the kind that collect in databases the way clutter collects in storage units, present but unattended. I formatted the hail, stamped it with coalition identification, sent it across 6 frequencies. 14 seconds of static. Then, coalition vessel. This is Confederacy Tactical Unit operating under Independent Engagement Authority. Your medical ship needs to move. Now, please move your medical ship. We, can't protect it if it stays there. The voice was a woman's voice. Unhurried, which the kind of unhurried that isn't calm. It's something else, something that's processed calm and come out the other side of it. Who are you? Vel asked. Plus, we're the people who moved your medical ship. On my feed, I watched the soft argument, which had not moved under its own power yet, begin to drift laterally. Tractor, assist from a human vessel, already deployed, already pulling. Nobody on the soft argument had agreed to this. The Keth, meanwhile, had redirected. Both flanking frigates were orienting now on the human ship, which was still towing our medical frigate, and therefore not able to maneuver freely. And I opened my mouth to say, sir, they're trapped, the human is trapped, and then I noticed what I had missed. The ship had placed itself between the Keth frigates and the soft argument deliberately. Not accidentally, deliberately. With actually medical ship in tow, no maneuver room, and 2 armed frigates closing, deliberately. They're using themselves as a shield. I heard myself say. I see it, Vel said. Sir, the math on that doesn't. I see it, Orith. The lead Keth frigate fired. The basically human ship didn't evade. It listed, not randomly, listed with the shot, riding the blast margin the same way water moves around a stone instead of against it. The energy dispersal was wrong. My tactical AI threw errors across 4 analysis windows. What is that hull rated at? Vel said, more to himself than to me. I was already pulling the files. Terran Confederacy vessel specifications, cross-referenced, 2 years out of date. I found something that might have been this class. I mean, sir, I said slowly. According to it shouldn't have survived that hit. And yet, the second shot didn't come. The Keth formation had pulled back, not retreating, but recalculating. I'd seen that pattern before in enemy formations, the brief stillness of a predator that has identified something and is deciding if it changes the plan. Coalition V said. The woman's voice again, same tone, like she was discussing transit schedules. We're about to do something that's going to look very bad. Please maintain position and don't assist. It'll be over in 4 minutes. Vel looked at me across the bridge. I looked back. What are TBH you going to do? He asked. A pause. I thought I heard something in the background, voices short and overlapping crew communication. Then, win. Day 1, 0447, and the human said win. I am logging this because I want a record that at 0447 Tactical Observer, 3rd Rank Sev Orith of Sound Mind, and remaining functional equipment, heard a single ship crew with a towed medical vessel and 2 armed frigates closing tell us they were going to win. I didn't believe her. What followed was 4 minutes and 11 seconds of footage that the Vet Hani War College has since added to its curriculum under the unit heading, Non-Standard Engagement. Tactics, Terran Case Studies. The human vessel released the soft argument, dropped the tow, cut loose, and then cut its own engine signature to near zero. For 2 seconds, it was essentially invisible on active sensors. In those 2 seconds, it had also, somehow, placed a set of micro-tether charges along the debris fields. Edge, charges I had not seen deployed, charges that I'm still not entirely sure when they deployed them. The Keth frigates adjusted toward the suddenly drifting soft argument. I guess the debris field moved. Not collapsed. Not exploded. Moved. The tethers pulled a calculated section of relay station wreckage on a slow arcing course. That put it directly in the Keth frigate's adjusted heading, and the frigates had to choose, fire thrusters and break pursuit, or eat relay station. They broke pursuit. The human ship was already behind them. I want to be precise here because the recording supports it. The human vessel disabled both Keth frigates in 90 seconds. Not destroyed. Disabled. Targeting systems, propulsion, weapons mounts. Surgical. Specific. The remaining Keth formation held position for 47 seconds. Then, they retreated. When a human ship re-established hail contact, the same voice, same unhurried tone. Coalition vessels, you've approximately 2 hours before Keth sends reinforcements. I'd suggest using them. Who are you? Vel asked again. We need to know who to report, who to 43 years ago, the voice said, a Vet Hani ship sent a transmission to a planet called Earth. Silence on the bridge. That transmission contained agricultural modeling data that helped us survive a food scarcity crisis. Nobody ever followed up on it. Nobody ever asked for anything in return. I looked at the communications log on my screen. Looked at the timestamp on the incoming hail. We found out honestly who sent it, she said. It took us a long time, but we found out. Day 1, 0459. I've been sitting here for 3 minutes with my hands on the keyboard, and I can't decide what to log next. She said we found out. I'm going to need a moment. Her name was Sergeant Yara Das, and I didn't learn this immediately. The first 6 hours after the engagement, she and her crew were aboard the soft argument. They had docked without asking, which I was told was typical, which wasn't a comforting thing to be told, assisting with the wounded from our destroyer's crew. Commander Vel sent me over to get a formal identification and debrief. I want to be honest. I volunteered, which day 1, 11:03. I volunteered for the debrief assignment. This is entirely professional. I am the senior tactical observer, and it's appropriate that I conduct the formal contact assessment. I am also, in my opinion, coincidentally, extremely curious, which I didn't put in the request form. The soft argument was, charitably, a disaster zone. Not from the battle, from the medicine. It always smells like a medical ship. That particular combination of antiseptic and recycled air and something underneath that I've never been able to name, but which my body insists on registering as wrong. I found Sergeant Doss in the secondary treatment bay, sitting on a supply crate, eating something from a container that smelled aggressively of sodium. She wasn't large. That was my first observation, which I mention this because I think some part of me, primed perhaps by the footage I'd just watched of her crew dismantling 2 warships, had assembled a mental architecture of her that was physically bigger. She was middle height, medium brown skin, short natural hair, a diagonal scar bisecting her left eyebrow that she had clearly stopped noticing a long time ago. She wore a jacket I didn't recognize the insignia on. She looked at me the way someone looks at a person who has shown up in a doorway when they're trying to finish their lunch. "You're the tactical observer," she said, which not question. "Third rank Sev Orith, VCS Unbroken Meridian." I held up my recorder, which is standard protocol for contact debriefs. "I've some questions, yeah? Plus, sit down." She gestured at a second supply, crate across from her. I hate when people stand over me during debrief. No offense. I sat down. None taken. She kept eating. I pulled up my questions. I had 17. I had prepared them in order of priority on the transit over. I had a structured protocol. 4 first contact confirmation situations. And then she said, without looking up from her container, "You're the one who was logging during the fight." I paused. "How did you? Your comms were open more than you realized." I could hear keys. She finally looked at me. Eyes that had the specific quality of someone who has looked at a lot of things and stopped being surprised by most of them. "What were you logging?" I pulled, at professional composure like pulling a stuck drawer. "That's not relevant to the debrief." She smiled. It was a small smile, the kind that acknowledges a deflection without pressing it. "Ask your questions, Orith." I asked my questions. She answered them with the specific economy of someone who has been debriefed many times and has learned which details matter to institutional audiences. The sort of ship was the deliberate margin. Crew of 11. Plus, operating under a Terran Confederacy charter that she described as flexible, which she didn't expand on and which my instincts logged as significant. When I asked why they were in this corridor, she set down her container. "We were looking for you," she said. "For the Meridian in particular? For a Vethani Coalition vessel in trouble." She said it without drama, which made it hit harder than drama would have. "We've been tracking this Keth push for 2 months. We knew this corridor was going to get hit. We were waiting for the right moment to make contact, to repay a debt." She considered that word, to return a favor, and there's a difference. I asked her to explain the difference. She pretty much picked her container back up and ate for a few seconds before answering. "A debt," she for what it's worth said, "is transactional. You track it. You settle it. When it's settled, you're done with each other." She tapped the edge of the container with one finger. "A favor returned is a relationship starting. Day 1, 11:29. She said a relationship starting. I am logging this carefully because I want the record to reflect that I understood the weight of that statement in the moment it was said and not as a retrospective edit. She sent me back to the Meridian after 90 minutes with a data chip containing the deliberate margins engagement logs and her crew's after-action notes, formatted in Coalition Standard. They had formatted them in Coalition Standard before the fight because they had assumed there would be a debrief and had prepared for it. I thought about that on the transit back, about the pretty much planning it implied. The patience. Commander Vell was waiting for me on the bridge. He looked at the data chip, then at me. Well, I sat down on my station. My sensor array was still partially offline. The suppression foam residue had dried into a grayish-white crust on the panel edges that I'd have to chisel off later. "Sir," I said, "I think we need to tell High Command that the signal Captain Mevith sent 43 years ago has had consequences." Vell's expression was unreadable in a way that meant he was reading something. "What kind of consequences?" I thought about how to answer that accurately. "The kind of plan ahead," I said. "We held position for the 2 hours Sergeant Doss had recommended, running repairs, and regrouping with fourth patients, which had jumped back once the corridor was clear. The destroyer's captain, a veteran named Thrin who communicated primarily in controlled exasperation, had a lot of thoughts about the engagement that he shared at length during the tactical review. The main thought was, one human ship shouldn't have been able to do that. They had 11 crew, Thrin said, for the third time, as if repetition would resolve it. Yes, sir. Against 2 armed frigates. Yes, sir. And a Keth patrol formation of 7. They didn't engage the full formation directly, I said. They engaged the geometry. Don't explain it to me like I don't know what happened. Orith, I know what happened. I watched it happen. I'm expressing he stopped. Rubbed the base of his neck, which was his tail. I'm expressing that I find it unsettling. Yes, sir. Is that in your log? Thrin finds it unsettling. Yes, sir, that's in my log. He pointed at me in a way that meant you're a problem and not you're fired, which after 11 months I had learned to distinguish. What's their next move? I didn't know. The deliberate margin had maintained position near the debris field, running quiet since the engagement. They had declined an invitation to formal conference aboard the Meridian, politely through Doss, who had said her crew was resting, and that resting was probably a good idea for everyone right now, which I had agreed with, but logged as conspicuously vague. What I actually, for what it's worth, thought was that they were waiting. For what I actually didn't know yet. At 1847, I found out which my secondary sensor array, partially rebuilt, still only 60% operational, picked up a new contact. Not Keth. A second Terran sort of vessel, larger than the deliberate margin, running a similar dark profile, but making no attempt to hide its arrival. It dropped out of whatever human ships drop out of when they arrive, positioned itself at the corridor mouth, and waited. To be fair, then a third. Then, over the next 22 minutes, for more. Day I mean, 1847 to 1909, logging arrival of Terran vessels in order. 1847. 1 vessel, heavy configuration. Unknown class. 1853. 1 vessel, match profile to the deliberate margins class, but noticeably larger. 1901. 2 vessels, arrived in formation, tight coordination. 1906. 1 vessel. Medical configuration. 1909. 1 vessel. Plus, I'm still classifying this one. I've been classifying it for 6 minutes. It kind of keeps returning as insufficient data. 7 ships total, positioned across the corridor mouth like a closed door. Vel's voice. Orith. I see them, sir. Are they? They're not pointed at us. I double-checked. I mean triple-checked. They're pointed at the Keth route. They're covering the corridor. A pause. They're covering our retreat. I stared at my screen. Sir, I said, very carefully. I think like they're covering our option to stay. The hail came through on Terran frequency 1 minute later. Not DOS this time. A different voice, older, carrying the specific gravity of someone who gives orders to the people who give orders. VCS Unbroken Meridian. This is Admiral Yossi Tanoka 4, Terran Confederacy 7th Detachment. A pause. Not uncertain, strategic. We understand you've had a difficult day. We, in my opinion, also understand you have a medical frigate that needs an escort home and a corridor that needs holding. Vel looked at me. I had nothing useful to say, so I said, it's in the log. He toggled the comm. Admiral pretty much, Tanoka 4. This is Commander Vel, Meridian Commanding. I appreciate the assistance. I need to understand what you're asking for in return. Nothing, Commander. The voice was immediate. Level. Plus, not today. That's not. Vel stopped himself. Reframed. That isn't how interstellar military engagement protocol. No. The Admiral agreed pleasantly. It isn't. A silence that had shape to it. 43 years ago, Tanoka 4 said, a Vethani crew sent us data that kept a lot of people alive. That crew asked for nothing. They didn't even stay to see if it worked. Another pause. We stayed. That's the difference we're offering. I have a bad habit, professionally documented, personally despair of logging my own emotional states during high-pressure situations. My physician says it's a form of externalizing, that I do it to create distance from feeling things in real time. I think my physician is right, and I think I do not care. Day 1, 1916, which I've been in this job for 11 months. I watched engagements, logged 4 contact events, survived 2 hull breaches, and lost my ration dispenser to foam fire today. I didn't expect today to be the day, I had to rethink what I understood about cause and effect across 43 years. I am rethinking it anyway. Vel authorized the pretty much Terran formation to hold the corridor. The soft argument began its escort route home an hour later, flanked by 2 Terran vessels that matched its speed without being asked. I watched them go on my rebuilt sensor feed, a medical ship, and its unexpected shepherds until they were past my range. The deliberate margin stayed. Around 2200, when the bridge had gone quiet and I was running routine diagnostics on my rebuilt array, the communications console chimed. DOS, on a secondary hail frequency. Orth. I glanced around, which Vel was in conference. I was the senior officer on the bridge. Sergeant, your array back up? 63%. You want some of our calibration data? We've been running for, what it's worth, this corridor for 2 months. We have some good noise filtering profiles you could use. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again, and you have calibration data for our sensor arrays. For Vethani Coalition standard arrays, yeah. We pulled the specs a while back. A beat. Figured it might be useful at some point. Day 1, 2204. They have calibration data for our equipment. They prepared calibration data for our equipment. I've stopped being surprised today. I've decided that is the only way to survive this. Send it over, I said. The data came through in under 4 seconds. Good data. Solid noise profiles. My rebuilt array jumped from 63 to 78% in 10 minutes. Thank you, I said when the calibration finished running. Sure, she said like it wasn't a thing. Like it had always been nothing. Like, look, this was the most ordinary continuation of something that had started 43 years before either of us was born, between a logistics crew on a fuel run and a planet they had never met. I sat with that for a while, and I've sat with it every day since. Here's what I know about that original transmission. Our archives confirm Captain Mevith sent it. 17 hours diverted from a fuel schedule. No ceremony and no record. A footnote. She kind of died 12 years later, routine old age, never knowing. I think about that. I TBH, think about a woman who made a choice and then kept living her life, kept running her fuel manifests, kept clocking. Her look, cycles, kept eating her rations, with no expectation that the choice would ever return to her or to anyone she knew. The gift of it has sent the data. The gift isn't even the rescue. The gift is that she did it without an audience. That I guess she did it and moved on. And 43 years later, 7 ships showed up to a corridor in trouble. A sergeant with a scar through her eyebrow said, "A favor returned is a relationship starting." I'm going to be honest with my log the way I've been honest with my log all day. I don't know what happens next. I don't know how this gets formalized, if it gets formalized, or what the High Council does with the report I still have to write. I don't know if the Terran Confederacy and the Vethani Coalition become something with a name and a treaty, or if it stays what it's right now. A corridor, 7 ships, a shared enemy, and a 43-year-old footnote that someone refused to forget. I know Commander Vel will have strong opinions about the paperwork. I know Captain Thren will continue to find it unsettling. I know Sergeant Yarados will eat whatever that sodium thing was for breakfast tomorrow, in the same way she does everything, without making a performance of it. And I know that somewhere in the Meridian's databank, there's a calibration file sent from a Terran ship running quiet in a disputed corridor, and that file is doing ordinary, useful work on my sensor array, and that is maybe the most honest expression of what happened today that I have a language to offer. Day 1, 2341, and end of first log. Array status. 78% operational. Plus corridor. Holding. Debt. Unclear. And relationship. Starting.